I want to thank everyone for sharing their stories and experiences on this thread. I honestly had no idea how common this was. It is truly an eye-opener. I always thought that you needed to be in love with someone in order for a relationship to work out, but I guess it really depends. There really is no right or wrong answer to whether or not this holds true. Based on the comments, it is different for everyone. Reading these responses brought so many more questions to mind, and unfortunately, I saw that it also made people question the depths of their relationships with their current or potential significant others. I sincerely apologize to those whom my post made feel doubtful or insecure about their current or future relationships. I can see how this could discourage one from loving someone or being in a committed relationship. I never intended to make anyone feel that way. Love is an amazing feeling and is something people should all experience at least once in their life. So I hope this post does not scare you from embracing it if given the chance. However, do know that nothing is guaranteed to last. That also applies to the pain that follows afterward if and when it comes to an end. Anyway, thank you so much to the community, including women, for participating in this discussion. I am sorry I was not able to reply to all of you, but know that your input is appreciated. Thank you so much. Whoever you are, this is my first post, so it means a lot. Again, thanks. Story 1. I know 2 people who did this. I didn't think it was that common, but it seems some people would rather be in a relationship for companionship and friendship, even without love, than be alone. Story 2. Got married young at 20 to basically the first real girlfriend. Everyone changes a lot, and 9 years into the marriage, I realized I wasn't happy and didn't love her or even like her. It was like having a roommate. Divorced. She married my ex-best friend and seems much happier. Edit. Thanks for the birthday wishes. I had 100 messages in my inbox when I woke up. Look for me on progress pictures in a year. Story 3. I think this happened to me once, and I tried to convince myself I was in love but wasn't. I was relieved when she broke it off. I won't make that mistake again. Story 4. I think this describes how my ex felt about me. I took care of him and made life pretty cushy because I was so in love, and everyone thought we were so cute, so I think he felt pressured. We were college sweethearts. After getting married, he acted resentful about little things, was emotionally abusive, though I think somewhat unknowingly, and it was always my fault he wasn't happy. Then he cheated repeatedly until he met someone he did fall in love with. He basically wanted to get caught with her and did, so it all came out. We divorced and they are now married and they are probably a good couple together. I just wish I wasn't the one who had to suffer because he couldn't be honest with himself. Guys, don't settle for comfortable when it's not what you really want. It never ends well. Story 5. I know a guy who is almost 40 years old now, and in his whole life he wanted a wife and kids. He met this woman and they both wanted the same thing before it was too late, so they got married 2 years ago, and I guess the first child was born in October. Story 6. I guess I'll give the other side of the coin. My parents knew each other for 2 months before getting married. They definitely liked each other, but nobody can honestly say they were truly in love. They had to endure a lot of growing pains to learn how to tolerate each other. But now they definitely seem to be good partners. When my dad is on a business trip, he calls my mom 3 times a day because he misses her. So yes, it can work. Story 7. We met again after she turned 18. I asked to spend the night, never ended up leaving, and she became pregnant. I didn't want to leave her with my child. We ended up getting married after the child was born. I wanted him to have a home with both parents together. However, she did things early in the relationship that made me lose feelings for her, and I was only with her because of the previous reasons. I ended up leaving her because I was miserable. I feel much better by myself now. Plus, I still get to see my son. Story 8. This was going to be from a throwaway because there are people in my real life who know me by this account, but Ask Men doesn't allow throwaways, so whatever. Roll the dice time, I guess. I did this. To be fair, my wife did too. When we first started dating, I thought she was my type, and I think she figured out pretty quickly that I wasn't hers, except that I was single and willing to get married and have children, and that's what she really needed. She is a terrific mom, Parent-Teacher Association vice president, all of that, but there is no love between us. We moved in together pretty quickly, 6 months in, and I learned pretty quickly after that we weren't very compatible and made plans to break it off. She begged me to stay, and I knew by that time that I wasn't her dreamboat, but I was reliable and not terrible. At the same time, I didn't have any really good plans for my life and have never been too attached to it, so I figured I could donate it to her to help her pull herself up from a pretty terrible backstory. It's about 20 years later, and we have a 10-year-old. It's also been more than 10 years since we had sex. And before we were trying for him, she was working on her second virginity. That's been pretty rough. We have no intimacy and most of the time stay in separate parts of the house. But we're mostly cordial and polite, like roommates. We both love our son, and neither of us wants to live alone. We have pretty terrible communication issues that prevent any meaningful ability to make something better out of this. But neither of us is contemplating divorce, that I'm aware of. Overall, I wouldn't say I'm very happy with the situation, but to be fair, I wasn't terribly happy with my life beforehand, so it's hard to separate out how much of it is from the situation, how much I brought into the situation, and how much is just me. I don't think she's very happy either, but the same was true for her, and she doesn't want to talk about it with me. We both take stuff to keep us mellow instead of depressed, but she says it's not for depression for her. My goal is to keep it as opaque as possible to the kiddo for as long as possible and make it very clear that he's loved by both of us. After he's no longer a kid, we can figure out if we need to make changes. Thank you, kind gold-giving strangers. This continued to get attention through the night after I was pretty sure interest would wane. Most of the comments were well-meaning, and I appreciate them. Thanks for taking the time to offer suggestions or additional things to consider. Since most of them tracked along 4 particular lines of thought, let me just respond to them there. I should consider therapy. I appreciate the constructive advice. I have considered it seriously in the past. My reasons for not pursuing it are outlined here. Nothing really has changed since then, and local availability of inexpensive options has heavily declined. I've looked. I should attempt to reignite the flame with my wife. That's not something I'm interested in at this point. I understand where that suggestion is coming from, but after multiple attempts at that earlier on, it's really just not an option at this point. The mildly confusing argument that I'm being selfish by not selfishly pursuing happiness when I think it would be at the expense of my family and thereby providing my son with an example of a happy relationship that would certainly occur after I broke this one off. I get where you're coming from. I completely acknowledge that the situation is not an ideal model of a happy marriage, and that it will have an impact on my son. I also acknowledge that he would get over it if we got a divorce. But I think that this argument is making some critically wrong assumptions. One is that either my wife or I would be likely to pursue another relationship afterward and thereby give him a better model of a love-filled marriage. For reasons I don't really want to delve into, I'm completely convinced, after extensive thought, not just a stubborn assumption, that this is not the case and he would be left with 2 lonelier single parents and be stuck bouncing between them. We could get divorced and continue to live together like we are now, but I don't see that there would be a significant improvement there. 2 is that this factor alone is the one thing we're modeling that will have a lasting impact on him. I think right now we are modeling cooperation and civility, and we're able to both be there for him all the time and show him that we love him. Some of that would be lost if we split up. We're also better able to give him positive experiences like unlimited time with his grandparents, staying with friends in the neighborhood we live in, etc. That would be threatened if we broke up. 3 is that our model is determinative in how he will approach his own relationships as an adult. I understand there are a lot of anecdotal examples that suggest that. My own anecdotal example does not, and as I come from a big family and have friends in several families with multiple children, I can say with confidence that the same parental example can produce a very wide result in their children's approach to marriage. I should look into an open relationship. This is something I discussed with my wife very early on in our relationship, and the response was not positive. I don't think there's any chance her position has changed. Just as importantly, I've come to the conclusion that I'm not particularly interested, as I think I would have a difficult time being intimate with someone and not becoming deeply emotionally attached. Thanks again for your suggestions. Story 9. A lot of people just want a witness to their life. They get older and their friends disappear for one reason or another, and they look around and realize they have no one to tell their stories to or create memories with. So they start taking dating seriously. After a couple of years, They start getting worried they will never find someone and settle for someone who will be a good wife and mother and call it a day. Story 10. I married a woman I loved, but I didn't believe she would be my wife forever. She had a very religious father who was disowning her for being with me, living in sin. She kept asking, "Let's just get married." She'd say, "It's just a piece of paper." So I did it. We ended up with 3 kids. When the divorce happened, I got custody. Go figure. Long story. Story 11. I was thinking about doing this 3 years ago. I wasn't in love anymore with my girlfriend of almost 5 years. I was 25, she was 22. I hadn't been for at least a year, to tell you the truth. But the comfort of a relationship, the fear of hurting her, and my own cowardice made me push through. Then I read this piece in The Guardian. It's about a guy who repeatedly tells his wife he loves her, but he doesn't. It's such a sad read. I realized that I didn't want this and that I was heading straight towards it if I didn't do anything. So I broke up with her. All my fears but one came true. I hurt her a lot, and after 2 years of being single, I started wondering whether I made a big mistake and feared I wouldn't ever find someone who loves me as much as she did. Then I met my girlfriend, and I can honestly say it was all so worth it. We're more compatible in every aspect of life. I can talk with her about everything. I'm more attracted to her physically and mentally. We're moving in together this summer. My ex has moved on as well. We're both so much better off now. To anyone in that situation, break free. Bite the bullet. You'll thank me later. Unless there are kids involved. That changes everything in my opinion. Story 12. Thanks for starting this thread. It's been really eye-opening. I just wanted to tell my story and don't mind if it's lost in the void of these comments. I was in a relationship with a really great girl for almost a year in my late 20s. We got along really well and had similar points of view and opinions. Everything was nice. I honestly had nothing to complain about. I cared about her deeply, but I don't think I loved her in the way you should love someone if you're in a relationship. I loved her as a friend more than anything, and aren't the best relationships based on friendship? So I stuck with it. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't what I really wanted. I started to be distant and have less tolerance for her. I wouldn't say I was ever nasty, but I wasn't putting into the relationship what she deserved. I basically forced her into breaking up with me through being distant. She said she thought our differences were what made us strong. I just saw them as reasons why it would never work out in the long run. I said I was happy in the current relationship we had, but that if what I was giving wasn't enough for her needs, then she had some thinking to do. The next day she came over to my place, and we broke up. She said she was sad and angry with me, confused why I couldn't see what she saw. She told me she loved me for the first time in our relationship on the day she broke up with me. Apparently she'd been in love with me for a while, but every time she tried to tell me by starting a conversation like, "You're my best friend," I deflect it with a joke like, "Well, you need to get better friends then." We met one more time about a month after the breakup to talk about it. After that, I was just sad. I had to remove her from any social media ties. I also had to remove her friends who were also my friends because Facebook kept mentioning her through them. Mutual friend is going to event with ex-girlfriend. Just reading her name tied my stomach in knots. Because I met her on Tinder, we didn't have any mutual friends or work to stay in contact with. I honestly have no idea how her life is going. I only know she's still living in the same city as me because I saw her driving her car a few months ago. I still think about her. I don't like the thought of her being with someone else, but at the same time, I really hope she is with someone great who treats her well. I feel sadness and regret when I think of her. I don't regret being with her even though I never thought it would work out. I also don't regret that we broke up. I would joke to my friends after we broke up that she could have dragged me kicking and screaming down the aisle and we still would have had a great life together. Have a home, kids, nice holidays, and nice things. It would be a life no one could regret having lived. It just wasn't what I wanted for an unknown reason. Story 13. I was never head over heels in love with my wife. I care about her and the times that we hung out together were great, but it wasn't like any kind of love I had before. Oddly enough, It was all of the challenges we went through together after we got married that made me realize how awesome she is and made me fall more in love with her. I thought back to all of the women I had been with before where I felt that knockout, deeply in love at first sight feeling and realized that none of them could have pulled me through the difficulties that we dealt with and come out better and stronger. It takes a certain type of person to truly make you a better and stronger version of yourself, and she's that person. It's been a whirlwind, but I can't imagine being with anybody else. For the curious, we've been through 1 suicide, 2 parental deaths, 1 grandparent death, sudden death of a close friend due to a blood clot, family moving away, birth of 2 kids, almost losing 1 kid due to accidental drowning, 2 cancer-related deaths, 1 cancer scare, and 1 near-death experience. All in the span of 6 years. Story 14. I was in a relationship like this a few years ago. I cared about her, I loved her, but, as cheesy as it sounds, I wasn't in love with her. One of the few relationships I've been in where she was far more into me than I was into her. It didn't end well. I gradually grew more resentful, more distant, and more spiteful until I woke up one day to see her fully clothed and sadly announcing she was moving back in with her parents.